Oh, oui, oui! CSBN, mon ami! Hey, it's the mayor of Paris! Hey, mayor, so I'm thinking, how about this Christmas? We decorate the Arc de Triomphe in Christmas lights. It'll look like this. Bam! Hi, I'm Robert Donlin, and welcome back to Lights by the Sea. Today, we're going to begin a three-part series on building a leaping arch. Part 1 will be to gather the materials and build the arches. Part 2 will build the controller, which will control the lights. In Part 3, we'll use X lights to sequence those lights to music. When I first started researching arches, I watched a video of a single arch build using HDPE tubing. That's high density polyethylene. Now, HDPE is not something you'll normally find in your local hardware store. I wanted to build something that was fairly inexpensive and that I could get from the local hardware store. So I continued my research, scoured the forums, and I found a design which used PEX tubing or shark bite, which can be purchased locally. We're going to build a triple arch using materials you can buy locally from your hardware store. So let's get started. Here's a list of materials we will need for the build. I will put a link in the description below. 2 3/4-inch 10-foot sections of Schedule 40 PVC, 2 1-inch 10-foot shark bite PEX tubes, 14 3/4-inch PVC tees, 1 5-meter roll of pixel string, and 3 feet of pixel wiring. Here's what the final arch will look like. The design basically consists of 3/4-inch PVC, some elbows, and shark bite PEX tubing. Here's the arch design. The basis for all measurements is a 5-meter roll of LED strip lighting. Arch 1 will be 75 pixels, about 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet. To account for wiring at the ends, I will add 4 inches total for a final length of 102 inches of PEX. Doing some basic math for circumference, which is pi times diameter, we will calculate our diameter for the arch to be 66 inches. This will be the total length of our base. Speaking of pi, we celebrated Pi Day in an earlier video. I will link it in the upper right of the screen. We repeat these calculations for Arch 2 and Arch 3. The PEX tubing will be 69 inches for Arch 2 with a base of 46 inches, and the PEX tubing will be 37 inches with a base of 25 inches for Arch 3. This is our cut list for the PVC piping. We want to keep our arches symmetrical, so we'll be doing 2 of each of these cuts. We also have to account for the PVC tees having about a ½ inch gap. Now we can start cutting. It's important to have a good tube cutter. I picked up these PVC cutters from a local hardware store for about 10 bucks. Double check your design and cut the PEX tubing to length. I normally put my measuring tape on the floor and just line up the tubing for the cuts. Using the PVC cut list, make all your PVC cuts. Double check the cut list and be sure you have all your parts. Since the PEX will not fit into the 3/4-inch tee, we'll need to open up the tee by drilling it out. In an earlier design, I tried to use a hose adapter, but it made feeding the pixel strip through the arch too hard. A 1 1/8 Forstner bit is the perfect size for opening the tee. Simply secure the tee and start drilling. It's a little tricky to bore out the tees, and you may have to run the drill at a high speed. This would be much easier if I had a drill press. Repeat this for 5 more tees. Now that we have all our parts prepared, we can build the arches. Just start with the base, and get all the parts snugly fit based on the design. I'll speed up the video through the complete build. Once the base is completed, we can now attach the PEX tubing. The PEX is fairly easy to bend, however, you may have to stand on your base at times to hold it in place while bending the PEX. I'll speed up the video so you can have a laugh while I fight this arch monster and try to get the PEX tubing into the base. Here's what the arches should look like after your build. Now that we've completed the mechanical build, It's time to start modifying the pixel string so that it fits into the arches. You'll remember the lighting lab from a previous episode, which I'll link up here above. We'll be heading over there to solder our pixel strips. If you've never soldered before, you may want to practice on a few wires before starting on the pixel strip. Soldering is fairly easy, but it can be tedious.
We'll need to cut and splice in some extensions from arch 1 to arch 2, and then from arch 2 to arch 3. Based on measurements, the first splice will be about 3 feet, 1 meter, and the second 2 feet, or about 60 centimeters. We'll be using a 5 meter, 12 volt LED light strip. Now we can count and cut our pixel strip. We will count from the output end. Mark the strip at 24 and 51. That will leave 75 pixels for arch 1. Before cutting, make sure you will be cutting in the middle of the copper pad. Make your cuts at the marked locations, and then set the pixel strip aside. We'll be soldering the connections here in a moment. Pull back the protective plastic and clamp the strip to the jaws. We're going to tin the pads before soldering on the wire. I tin both the strip and the wire to make the final solder connection easier. Put your heat shrink on the wire, but keep it away from where we will be soldering. For pixel wiring and aligning them to the tabs, I like to stick with red for V+, the middle green wire for data, and the blue wire for V- or ground. Solder each connection to the strip. Try to evenly heat the wire and the pad by placing the solder iron on both at the same time if possible. Once complete, give the connection a little tug to confirm that your connections are solid. Also, inspect for any solder that may short between the connections. Move your heat shrink into place and then shrink it onto the wires. I use a 3:1 reducing clear heat shrink around the pixel strip and the wires. I also squeeze some silicone gasket material, the same stuff you use on aquariums. The silicone is a second line of defense against water intrusion. Now perform one last inspection, just to make sure we won't get water into that connection. Repeat this process 3 more times for the remaining connections. Connect the string to your pie hat or a tester to check the lights before we put them in our arches. Click on the link in the upper right to see how we test lights. We now have our pixel strip built and ready to install into the arches. Starting with the output end of the string, feed it through arch 1, continue through arch 2, and then finally arch 3. The elbows are a tight fit, so take your time and work the end connector through the elbows gently. For the best pixel presentation, make sure you're aligning the pixel strips face up. If they face down, you won't get a nice diffused look on the arch.
Our arch prop is now built. I still have some cleanup to do, such as securing the T's to the base and cleaning up that shark bite writing from the PEX tubing. In the next part of the series, we'll be building the controller box that's used to control these lights. My arch design is just one of many ways to build a leaping arch. If you have any suggestions or tips and tricks in building a leaping arch, please leave them in the comments below. Like this video, please like it, and even better, share it to Facebook, Twitter, or any social media outlet that you frequent. Please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be notified of future episodes. Once again, I'm Robert Donlin, and this is Lights by the Sea. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. So let's get started.